Another edition of exciting slide presentation by Mrs. Caltagirone. I'm going to try to talk through the slides and explain a little bit about each one as if you were sitting in the classroom. Before COVID, this is how we took notes. As I go through the slides, you need to be taking notes. I would suggest if you're at home and you have a printer that you print out the fill-in-the-blank notes and write them in with pencil, and then you can take a picture and upload the picture and put them into your Google Drive in your Imperialism folder that you should have made, or you can then type them in and save them in your Google Drive. But you need to have all of the notes. It's very important for the tests. All right, the slide number 1 is imperialism. America builds an empire. The word imperialism means it's a country that takes over or has control of other areas of the world that it's not their country, but they control it. Okay, and here's a quote. We have a record of conquest, colonization, and expansion unequaled by any people in the 19th century. We are not about to be curbed now. This was by Henry Cabot Lodge. He was a very famous imperialist senator from Massachusetts, and he said this in 1895. Now, the last unit that we covered was the Progressive Era, and it actually covers the same time period that we're going to be talking about now with imperialism, the late 1800s into the early 1900s. In this unit, we're going to cover the Spanish-American War, and we're going to learn how America goes from just a country that we kind of minded our own business. We followed George Washington's advice that we don't get involved in foreign entanglements until this unit, and then America becomes an influence around the world. All right, what is foreign policy? Right? Foreign policy is a country's policy or way of dealing business toward other nations. International anarchy is sovereign nations depend on their own military and economic power. Balance of power. No one country becomes too powerful. Control of U.S. foreign policy. Presidents and Congress both play a role. Traditional foreign policy was George Washington's farewell address, and he said we should not get involved in foreign entanglements. And national interest, security, economic investments, and promoting democracy. Those are the different kinds of foreign policy that we have been involved in. Right? Reasons for colonial expansion. Now, we were still a colonial country back then, very small, but why did we want to expand and get more territory? Okay, the imperialist people that supported expansion, they were people like Henry Cabot Lodge, and he wanted the United States to get colonies. Colonies provided raw materials and new markets for U.S. industries. If we had a colony, say in Africa or in Asia, we would be able to get materials there that maybe we don't have on U.S. soil. And also that was places where we could sell our products that we made here. Also, colonies would help the U.S. strengthen our naval bases against other major world countries who already had colonies. If we had colonies, say, in the Caribbean or maybe in the Pacific on islands, then we could send our Navy there. It would strengthen us. It would help to protect us, perhaps, from foreign invaders. All right? Nationalism is a word that it shows, or it means that the country that you live in, that you believe that country should be strongest, and it should, the policies and the beliefs of that country should be promoted above all others. Nationalism would show other nations how strong the U.S. had become. Expansionism, that means growing, it would raise U.S. prestige and influence across the world. U.S. missionaries wanted to spread Christian religion, ideals, and technology to other native countries and other native people. And U.S. ideas are superior to those of other nations, so it must be spread. That was the attitude of imperialist. All right. The anti-imperialist opposed the acquisition of colonies by the United States. They did not support new taxes and expenses of imperialism. They said that it might lead to compulsory or required military service. It might lead to men being drafted into the military to protect areas around the world that we had control of. And many felt that it would lead to more immigration into the United States, and it felt that it violated the ideals and I'm sorry, that slide got cut off. Let me see if I can see what it says. Felt that it violated the ideals of, actually what that's supposed to say is the ideals that we established our country on, that we wanted freedom and we wanted to be able to do what we should feel is right. And we said that other countries should have that same right. Okay, I'm sorry, violated the ideals and spirit of democracy. Now, I know I'm not going to win any awards for these slides, but they are to help you go through. I want us to take a moment to look at this picture, okay? One of the things that's going to be very important on the STAR exam is that you're able to analyze political cartoons. This is a political cartoon that anti-imperialist used to say the United States thinks that it's too strong. And I want you to look at the man in the middle. He represents Uncle Sam, or the United States. And you see that he's standing on a podium that says Army and Navy. And it says his Uncle Sam is holding his end up. But if you notice those flags, they say Philippines, Cuba, Puerto Rico. I'm not sure what this one says right here. I can't really read that. But the men around here, they're imperialists. They're military people. They're looking up, and if you can see those people that Uncle Sam are holding, they are supposed to represent people from African countries and from Asian countries, and you can see it. Look, they don't look very happy, do they? And it looks like they're kind of being forced to hold an American flag, even though they're not Americans. So the imperialists said, America shouldn't be doing this. These countries have a right to their own law to decide who wants to control them, and America has no business going to other countries and enforcing our values on other people. All right, Alfred Thayer Mahan, very important. You're going to have him on the STAR test. I'll just about guarantee that there'll be a question about him. He was an admiral in the Navy, and he wrote a book called The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. He argued that throughout history, the countries that were the strongest have always had a strong navy. Spain, Great Britain, always had a very strong navy, and Alfred Thayer Mahan said that's what we need. He was an imperialist who argued for making U.S. into a world power through naval power. He said the U.S. needs a strong navy. We need a strong merchant marine to protect colonial interest in other parts of the world. And he said colonies they serve as coaling stations and places for trade. So he said we can buy coal, we can fuel up if we have colonies. Maybe if we control islands and our navy is out, we can use those islands to refuel our ships and our fleets. Right? Okay, and that's it for this lesson. Be sure that you fill in the blanks for these, and make sure that you upload them into your folder, either through a picture of them or through the fill in the blank sheet itself. Make sure that you have that. You do not need to turn them in at this time, but you'll be glad you have these notes when it's time for the next test.